Tonight, Anthony Albanese left red-faced by a damaging slip-up on day one. School holiday havoc at Melbourne Airport with warnings it could last for weeks. Northern and western suburbs facing a garbage backlog as workers prepare to strike. A police officer accused of driving at 230 kilometres per hour on duty. Ferrari fans paint Lygon Street red as the GP puts Melbourne back on the map. And later, a Hawthorn legend's critical test. John Platten caught up in football's time bomb.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Anthony Albanese has suffered a damaging blow on day one of the election campaign, forced to apologise over an embarrassing gaffe. The Labor leader was left red-faced when he was unable to name the current cash or unemployment rates.
There are campaign moments that come and go.
Our next PM.
Hi. It's a full-strength brew on the economy.
And then there are campaign moments that stick. This is one of them.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4. Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
The Alternative Prime Minister already defending accusations he lacks economic know-how, unable to nominate one of the leading indicators, quoted constantly in parliamentary debates and the media. His finance spokeswoman had no trouble.
The unemployment rate's at 4%.
A similar issue with recalling the Reserve Bank's official interest rate.
We can do the old Q&A stuff over 50 different. Do you know it? Over 50 different figures.
There were plenty of Qs, but he refused to provide a single A. And Scott Morrison, can you nominate the cash rate and the unemployment rate?
Well, 0.1% is the cash rate. The unemployment rate, I'm happy to tell you, was 4% and is falling to a 50-year low.
Resisting the urge to stick the boot into his opponent, who, within 3 hours, issued an apology with a sting in the tail.
Earlier today, I made a mistake. I'm human. But when I make a mistake, I'll fess up to it and I'll set about correcting that mistake. I won't blame someone else, I'll accept responsibility.
Earlier, head-to-head on 7 Sunrise, if only briefly. Interviewed one after the other, Scott Morrison emphasising the economy.
Well, this election is a choice between the proven economic and financial management of my government and a Labor opposition that is unproven, untested and unknown.
But facing his own test over reports Education Minister Alan Tudge's former press secretary, with whom he had a long affair, will be paid more than $500,000 compensation after an investigation into her allegations of bullying and harassment. Yet Mr Tudge remains technically a member of his cabinet.
We held an independent investigation into that matter and there was nothing found that would see Mr Tudge not being able to continue on in the role.
With the first news poll of this campaign showing Labor still well ahead, Scott Morrison knows that for him this election remains far from in the can. Labor's primary down 1 to 37, the Coalition 36, Labor leading 53-47 after preferences, as the Parliament is officially dissolved with a bang. On a day, Anthony Albanese really needed a hug. Mark Riley, 7 News.
Melbourne Airport has been hit by another day of turmoil as school holidays and a Grand Prix exodus led to packed terminals and long delays. It's already putting travellers to the test and they're being warned it could last for weeks.
First day of school holidays and at Melbourne Airport, the queues began outside. Inside, families leaving for a break joined Grand Prix fans leaving town.
It's chaos. It's absolute chaos.
It's just a nightmare.
It's crazy. I've never seen it this busy before.
I wonder if we're actually going to make our flight this morning.
High demand combined with depleted airline and airport staff mean big delays. At Qantas, many of the team is home in isolation.
Around 20% on average, but in some areas it's high as 50%. And that's because of the COVID issue.
Despite facing backlash last week, the Qantas chief is still suggesting passengers are out of practice.
I think we're all a bit rusty in travelling. I know I am.
The Australian Services Union says the blame falls on Qantas for sacking workers.
Anyone promise to hit me at 9 o'clock?
It was made worse when a baggage conveyor belt broke down, leaving suitcases piling up. And for a plane load going to Cairns, it was a holiday headache. Their flight cancelled just 70 minutes before takeoff.
There's a plane around, but there's no crew to fly it.
They're going to reschedule all of us tomorrow on a flight.
How's that leave you feeling?
Pretty crap.
Terrible. I mean, my kids are devastated.
Yeah, we're a bit grumpy. It's fair to say.
There were 87,000 passengers coming and going from Melbourne Airport today. That's just down on Friday's peak of 90,000. The difference is today is largely people leaving town. It's our highest departures in more than 2 years. And another surge is ahead for Easter this weekend.
You know, it's exciting to see people travelling again, out and about.
Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
And Melbourne's north and west could see rubbish piling up as garbage workers take industrial action. Paul Dowsley is in Brunswick this evening, and Paul, they're stopping work over a pay dispute.
Mitch, it's about to get dirty with some Cleanaway drivers walking off the job for 2 hours, both this Thursday and next Tuesday, and banning overtime. The Transport Workers Union is accusing Cleanaway of being dishonest and disrespectful as it negotiates a new enterprise agreement for its commercial waste drivers. The union says Cleanaway made unauthorised changes to the agreement and then put it out for a vote by drivers who service schools and businesses. So the council areas affected: Moonee Valley, Moreland, Hume, Brimbank, Wyndham and Banyule.
Given Cleanaway's approach and the possibility that they could look to roll this method out across a number of other contracts, we could see the dispute spreading to council or domestic waste.
I've heard back from Cleanaway in just the past 5 minutes, Mitch. They insist that they are being transparent in these negotiations and they have dismissed the claims of the union.
Paul Dowsley in Brunswick, thank you. A policeman could face jail if convicted for speeding at more than 200 kilometres per hour while responding to a car crash involving a colleague. He's been charged with reckless conduct endangering life, but he says it was justified.
Leading Senior Constable Bradley Beecroft is accused of putting lives at risk to help an injured colleague hit by a car. The police officer allegedly hitting speeds of up to 230 kilometres an hour. It was less than a year after 4 police officers were killed on the Eastern Freeway. He travelled in circumstances where he believed he might be met with police officers in a critical condition or worse. Bradley Beecroft and his colleague were the closest unit on patrol in Violet Town when they got the call. The highway patrol vehicle overtaking 77 cars in the 7-minute drive along the 9-kilometre stretch of freeway. A fixed speed camera allegedly detecting the officer at 207 kilometres an hour.
His state of mind as to the condition of his colleagues is very relevant, but the reality is the court's going to have to look at the totality of all the evidence.
The officer claims his Gold Class licence means he's exempt from speed restrictions. Emergency services are currently being criticised for taking too long to attend jobs. I'm being criticised for getting there too fast. When the leading senior constable arrived at the crash scene, investigators say he provided first aid treatment to his injured colleague before the man was taken to hospital with bruising. Reckless conduct endangering life carries a maximum sentence of 10 years behind bars. Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
Our Grand Prix is being celebrated as a mega success that's put Melbourne back on the global stage and drawn record crowds. Ferrari fans took their party to Lygon Street to savour their thrilling Formula One win.
Melbourne's home of Ferrari turned red. For its busiest night in 3 years, foot traffic on Lygon Street up 120%.
People just packed the streets to the point where they had to block off, the police came and blocked off the street because there were so many people. It was more like a nightclub actually last night.
We did not expect it to be that busy, I'm not going to lie. Like the staff were actually struggling to keep up with the customers.
Images of the Grand Prix party were beamed across the globe. A record-breaking crowd watched Charles Leclerc's win at Albert Park.
And these celebrations are but just the beginning.
We've shown that we deserve to be on the international stage when it comes to sporting events.
Melbourne's blockbuster weekend, from soccer to comedy.
It's very clear now that Melbourne, Victoria, is open for business.
The crowd crush did present some problems, commuters facing lengthy waits for public transport, ride shares surging to more than triple the usual rate. The government adamant it's part and parcel of a large event.
When you've got a massive crowd, there are going to be some challenges.
The race to bump out has already begun. The event takes more than 2 months to set up, but just days to clear the majority of the track and return it to local sporting clubs. Organisers are already looking to the future, adamant Melbourne will always be the home of the Grand Prix.
There's no other place in Australia to stage this race, and that's why it's here until 2025 at the very least.
Rochelle Brown, 7 News.
The official opening of a bridge across the Murray River today has exposed a big rift between the Victorian and federal governments. Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce clashed with State Transport Minister Jacinta Allen over infrastructure spending.
A jointly funded $323 million Murray River Bridge, officially opened, but definitely no celebration in these faces.
Hang around if you want to get some bad press. Just get right in there. Get right and close.
Victoria is furious at Canberra's infrastructure funding.
We're going it alone on the Metro Tunnel. We're going it alone on the Westgate Tunnel. If these were projects in New South Wales, we'd be getting 50% funding.
The response, confusing.
And as this nation wants to go forward and buy nuclear submarines, then we must also invest on behalf of Victoria in such things as Port Hedland.
Ms Allen says Mr Joyce refuses to meet her.
I simply remind the Deputy Prime Minister that Victorians are Australian taxpayers as well.
Phones work in both directions last time I checked.
It degenerated into a political circus.
I can't let that go. OK, let us quickly go through. This is how important regional Australia is to the Labor Party. What party are you with?
The Nationals.
What party are you with?
Liberal Party. To be on the same team.
And now we're going to go. Now we're going to go to the Labor Party candidate. Excuse me.
We're not politicising this.
Crickets.
Eventually, the bridge opened to traffic with a vintage car cavalcade. For the people of Echuca, this should have been a day of history. They were frustrated it got bogged down in politics.
I was disappointed to see that happen. It sort of marred a bit the excitement of everybody else.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
There's some good news tonight on a police officer injured in a tragic crash at Mildura. Tegan Doling has the details, and Tegan, his condition is improving.
Mitch, leading Senior Constable Thomas Canane is slowly on the mend after he was flown here to the Royal Melbourne Hospital in a critical condition following Friday night's crash. But he is now doing slightly better and is in a stable condition. His colleague, Senior Constable Briar Joyce, and ute driver Josh Moore died when the two cars collided. Now, police are still coming to terms with the tragedy. Today, the Chief Commissioner, Shane Patton, as well as the Police Minister, Lisa Neville, travelled to Mildura. They met with Senior Constable Joyce's family and her colleagues at the Mildura Police Station. Mitch.
Tegan Doling, thank you. Russian forces are building up in Ukraine as another general takes charge of the attack. His reputation as the butcher of Syria has the world bracing for a new offensive and new brutality.
A convoy 13 kilometres long. Russian tanks lined up in eastern Ukraine, ready for a dangerous new phase of the war with a new general in charge. This is the so-called butcher of Syria, Alexander Dvornikov, dragged in by Putin after Russian troops were forced away from the capital, Kyiv. Expect brutality, more civilian casualties, as payback for the 19,000 Russian troops who've died on the front line.
This general will just be another author of crimes and brutality against Ukrainian civilians.
The invasion is heightened in towns already decimated, Mariupol and the second largest city, Kharkiv.
Ukraine won the battle for Kiev. Now another battle is coming.
But civilian fighters are confident, backed even by Australians.
Is that your real name, Joe?
Might be.
This is Joe. He's cagey about his background, but did tell us he's from Sydney and is a public servant.
It's intense, yeah. The Russians love to use their artillery, and they use it a lot.
When he's not picking up a weapon, he says he's checking vehicles for booby traps left by the Russians.
Swiss Army knife, you know what I mean? I'll butter your bread or I'll cut something.
We met Joe when he and other international volunteers showed up to help exhume bodies at a mass grave in Butcher. There are 67 bodies in this gravesite in the grounds of a church. The clean-up in Butcher has already started. Council workers and teams of volunteers shoveling away tons of spent ammunition and the remains of blown-up houses. As they clean up the streets, they take the war wreckage to a dumping ground in an open field. On this little red sedan, you can see the strip of white cloth across the roof, and they were flying that flag when the vehicle was hit. Their belongings are still inside. There's also some human remains have been left behind. If you have a look across this field, there are cars like that everywhere. Cars that people tried to escape in, some dying in the process. Have a look at this white van. Bullet holes have just raked down the side of it, and on the front, in Russian, the word for children. There are more civilian cars here than fighting vehicles, with fears this war graveyard will be recreated in Ukraine's east in coming days. In Kyiv, Jeff Parry, 7 News.
Back home, a fast-moving grass fire has come dangerously close to properties north of Melbourne. At least 10 crews were called to the blaze near Seymour this afternoon, measuring around 10 hectares in size. Several hay bales were destroyed and farm machinery damaged. A smoke warning was issued for the area. A teenager has been reunited with her Kelpie after the dog was stolen from a parked car in Melbourne's west. Detectives are reporting a surge in dog nappings, with thieves making thousands by selling them online.
Addie, the stolen Kelpie, reunited with her frantic owners.
We're glad she's alive and we've got her back.
The 3-year-old pet was in the family car outside a shopping centre in Tarneet on Saturday. The window was slightly open and police say a man reached inside, unlocked the car and stole the dog.
I was devastated, and because it's my daughter's dog, she's just devastated and crying and angry.
It's believed the energetic Kelpie later escaped her captor before being found by an off-duty ranger. As Victorians return to work, pet detectives say they've never been busier.
We probably receive 100 inquiries per week.
Brazen thieves are targeting expensive breeds like Dachshunds and French Bulldogs, snatching animals in plain sight.
Thieves are targeting the yards of pets. They will take them from, if they're tied up from outside of a shopping centre, they will target them if they're in a car or if they're out on the loose, having escaped their own yard.
The Lost Dogs Home says Addie's case is a reminder to owners never to leave dogs unattended in cars. The much-loved Kelpie back in time for her owner's 16th birthday.
Pretty good birthday present, Mia. Yeah, no, give that keeps on giving.
Jackie Quist, 7 News.
Delighted indeed. Tim Watson is here with a look ahead to sport, and Tim, a Demons premiership star is in trouble.
Mitchie's been charged with striking and faces a fortnight on the sidelines, detailed shortly. Also, the Saints cool off after their hot start, but it is a nervous wait for Paddy Ryder after this brutal bump. Plus, Cameron Smith blows his shot at Augusta as a new Masters champ puts on the green jacket, and Mitch surfing legend Kelly Slater is in town. See how he went at Bells Beach today.
OK, we'll see you a bit later. Thank you, Tim. There's new trouble for a mother jailed for leaving her baby in a hot car. Next on 7 News, now she's accused of ripping off vulnerable Victorians. Also, a destructive night as a car ploughs into 2 cars and a house. The suburbs' hardest hit as property prices fall. And Rebecca Madden reports on the 8-year-old fighting back after a stroke.